welcome back to my YouTube channel where I go over the process I followed during my PhD application cycle. If you have watched my previous videos, I have talked about how I applied for a PhD in 2024 and I got some really nice offers and I finally decided to go to University of Michigan, CSC, and I will be joining UMich in the fall of 2025. And also in my previous videos, I have covered different aspects of my application, starting from the month of March to the month of June, where I talked about some initial planning and how did I think about my recommenders, how did I go about identifying the strengths and weaknesses of my profile and making a roadmap such that I could address these weaknesses in the time to come before my applications were due. In this video, I would be going deeper into the next phase of my application cycle, which was July to November. Now, this is the time when everything was at its peak because I was getting deeper into every aspect of my application, ranging from aspects like writing my SOP, reaching out to my recommenders, deciding which universities I want to apply to, shortlisting faculties, understanding my own specific research interests better. I also sat for my English proficiency test since I'm an international applicant. So there were a lot of different parameters I needed to take care of. However, in this video, I would be talking about the most important parameter which will eventually also influence all these other aspects of your application, which is knowing what your research interest is and what kind of research would you like to do in your PhD. Now, this might sound either too vague to you or you might know what you want to do already. So if that's the case, congratulations. I think you really have your interests clear. But in my case, I think I had a very vague idea of what kind of research I like. So as I mentioned in the previous videos, my field of research is human-computer interaction. And I got into research almost 4 to 5 years ago before I started applying. And over these 4 to 5 years, I explored very different aspects of HCI, which is human-computer interaction. And since I was doing these different things, I did not have a very pinpointed interest of what I want to do next. I knew what things I liked about different subfields within HCI, be it like interactive systems, social computing, human AI interaction. I knew what I liked about each of them, but I would be honest, I did not have a very strong yes or no to either of the fields. I knew that within each of the fields there were things that I liked and I could maybe explore more in my PhD. I did have a clear idea of what I did not like in the kind of research I had explored. So yeah, my interests were so vague. I just knew I really liked HCI and I would like to get deeper into this field and learn more about the different theories and frameworks and become an expert in the field. But apparently that was not enough. Something I learned while talking to my seniors and different grad students was that in your SOP, you need to describe your interests in some more details and in a way that it's not very, very specific that, okay, I want to solve XYZ problem in my PhD, but it cannot be very broad either that, okay, I like human-computer interaction and I want to study how humans interact with computers. It should lie somewhere in the middle of it. It should be balanced enough. So this was quite a challenge for me. And I will also mention this, that everything that I talk about in this phase, like all the different aspects that I work on in this phase, none of it was something that I could get done with like in a week or in a day. It was not just a checklist item that I could just tick off. Everything needed time and eventual evolution to put together and build. So whatever I'll talk about is something that took me a lot of time and I kept building and improving on it over this entire period of July to October. So in this video, as I mentioned, I'll be talking very specifically about how I identified what my research interest would be. And this is also very essential because everything that you write in your SOP, everything that your recommenders write in their letters, and the faculties that you shortlist, the schools that you shortlist are all going to depend on this one factor. So this process starts with the question, what do I want to do in my PhD? And if you have a very broad idea of the field of research you like, for example, if you're a machine learning researcher and you like computer vision a lot, that is a starting point, right? And moving forward in the coming phases, you will have to sit with yourself and try to think what is something more specific within the field of, let's say, computer vision that I would want to research further. Now, this can be a very tough question in the sense that you don't know what you want to do in the next 5 years. This is a very long period of time. I don't know what I will be doing 5 years from now, and I don't know if a research problem that I pick right now is going to be relevant or interesting to me in the time to come. So, this kind of apprehension and wanting to pinpoint the perfect problem is going to come in your way of deciding what you exactly want to do. Now, I'll talk about what I did to understand my interest better. As I mentioned, I had a very vague idea of what I wanted to do. So, the very first thing I did in this process was exploring what exists out there. What are the different research areas within HCA? And I think the easiest way to do that is uh, just seeing, what are the different schools that are doing good HCI work, what kind of faculties do they have, and what kind of problems the faculty within these schools are trying to solve. So the first thing I did was shortlisting these schools. I did not have a very perfect strategy for this. It was quite simple. I went on CS ranking, I just filtered HCI in all the fields, and I saw what were the top schools. However, I did not stick to the top schools. Like, I did not just look at the top 10 or the top 20 schools there. I was also very active on social media platforms like Twitter. And I think Twitter, at least back then, was a very common platform for faculty and academia to talk about their research and to also talk about their future plans of recruitment. So I went through all these, shortlisted all these schools through platforms like CS Ranking, and through my network on Twitter, I got to know about what kind of work different faculties are doing and if they're recruiting. And I created an Excel sheet, and this Excel sheet was kind of like my most important resource throughout this process. And yeah, if I would have lost that Excel sheet, I think I would have lost everything that I had put together in this process. So I started with an Excel sheet. I wrote down all the school names, and then I started going through the faculty pages or like the research pages of all of these different schools. Now, every school lists down all the faculties they have, and also talk about their specific research areas. This does happen in most of the schools, but if you do find an exception, your job will be a little tougher because you'll have to click on every faculty page and see what kind of research they are doing. But if they have listed their research interest, that would be perfect. In this process, it would also be essential to identify what are the different programs you will need to apply to. Now, for example, HCI is a field which is practiced within different programs. So schools like programs like computer science and programs like information science would have faculty doing HCI kind of research. So identifying what are these different programs within the same university is also going to be important to you. I think it is valid for different fields within machine learning as well. So I'm sure this could be a common bit where the kind of research you are interested in is carried across by different programs. So what I did was shortlisting what these different programs were, and then going through the faculty pages of all these programs. Now I would see who all are doing HCI research, and then I would go through their profile. And this is where I would learn the different threads within HCI. And anything that would immediately speak to me or like was somewhat relevant to the kind of research I have been doing and I would list them down in my Excel sheet. And I did that for all the faculty. Another specific thing I did was mention what I liked about their research. Now, this required me to go through their existing work, uh, go through their Google Scholar, and if they have already talked about something specific that they are looking for PhD students to research into, read all that information. So I made that list, and I also wrote what I liked about each faculty. And I went through a lot of faculty pages, a lot of schools, and I think my first shortlist had like 100 faculties shortlisted, which is not a very good thing because 100 is very broad. I think to me, it just meant that my interest really is not very specific as of now. But even then, I had got a clearer idea of the kind of research that I resonated with because I just got a chance to reflect on what I liked. So I started with this. And moving on, I started seeing and started drawing threads between the different aspects that I had listed down in terms of what I liked. And I was able to come up with a very vague but still narrowed research interest within HCI that excited me and I could write about in my SOP. So I did that. The next step for understanding my research interest was starting a draft of my SOP. I just sat down and I tried to pitch that particular subfield through my words in an SOP. And in this process, I also got feedback on that SOP from an existing grad student who I got connected to through a feedback program. Now, uh, I they did like my SOP, they liked some aspects of my SOP, but they said that my interest was still not very clearly communicated. It was there at some places. I had mentioned what I liked, but it wasn't written down in explicit keywords or explicit terms. So, to a reader, they would have to put in some additional effort to identify what I really liked, which was not a very good thing. Because, well, ideally, it would be so nice if somebody's reading a recipe, they would put in that effort. But if you think from a grad committee or an admission committee's point of view, they just do not have the time to sit and try to understand what you are trying to say. You need to be very clear and explicit about what is it that you like. Additionally, based on what you write in your SOP, they are going to send your application to different faculties. So if they're not able to gauge what your research interest is, they'll not know which faculty to match you with or who would you be most relevant to. So writing this and being very clear about your interest is going to be important. Another thing I realized while talking to another PhD student was that while I had a clearer idea of a specific interest I liked, I was not able to think of a lot of faculties who would be interested in doing that work. Now, I could have introduced this thread eventually in my PhD and explored it further, but right now I really needed a thread where uh, different faculties could really relate to it and could resonate with it because it got way too obscure and specific. So I needed to broaden the scope of my interest a bit more. So these two things I realized I need to be explicit and I need to be very well balanced between two broad and specific. So my next iteration was just around this. I went through all the faculty again. I tried to shortlist some more faculty by categorizing them into the different buckets they fell into. By buckets, I mean the different research interests they fell into. And in this time, I also reflected on the kind of work I have already done and if a particular research interest would be supported by that work. Because obviously, if I'm trying to say I like XYZ, I'll have to provide some examples of why I like it and how am I so confident that this is something I want to do. So this too required a lot of iteration, a lot of introspection, reflection, and writing down various drafts of my SOP. But eventually, I did reach to a research interest, which I think led at the perfect balance of too broad and too specific. I could find a lot of faculties who resonated with it, And I was able to also very nicely write a story in my SOP to support that research interest. So hey, sorry to interrupt you, but I realized that I missed this very crucial bit that helped me identify my research interests for my applications. And this was actually a suggestion I got from one of the grad students I spoke to. And as I mentioned, it can be a little daunting to decide or to think about a research area that you would remain interested in for the next 5 years if you are already interested in a lot of different threads within your field of research. So, an advice I got was to think about something that you are currently very interested in, or something that is well connected to the kind of work you have done till now, because obviously you won't know what happens in the time to come, but you would know what you like at the moment. And I think thinking about this really took away a lot of uh, apprehensions for me, because I wasn't thinking too much about if I will remain interested in this problem 5 or 10 years from now. I just thought about what I like right now, and that also helped me understand my current interests better. And the final research area I talked about in my SOP was also something that I found interesting and exciting right now. And yeah, I built upon that. So I hope thinking this way could really be helpful to you as well. I think this entire process is going to be to find what this research interest is, something that you feel like excited about, and something that you are able to communicate very clearly about as well. Another very specific tip that I would like to provide in this would be to try to explore what are the different keywords that existing faculty are using to describe their research. When you start thinking in terms of keywords, your thinking gets very, very objective, and you are able to pinpoint what exact bit you like about a relatively broader field. So this entire process, I think, took me what, like 2 3 months to finally write down a very convincing research interest both for myself and for the reader. And it went hand in hand in with exploring different programs and also drafting my SOP. So I hope this entire process is rewarding for you, because it was for me. I learned a lot about my interest, and I learned a lot about HCI in general, which is just something that is so valuable to me. So while it sounds intimidating and there's so much to do, it is going to be a very rewarding experience as well. And in the following videos, I will talk more specifically about writing down SOP and reaching out to recommenders, reaching out to faculty you like, and deciding what programs you want to apply to. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful, and I'm really excited for whatever lies ahead of you in this cycle. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.